Greetings to everyone. We, the members of Group O, are going to present before you the topic Conditionally Convergent Series. Our team includes Harshvardhan Singh, Somajit Chakraborty, Harshvardhan Goenka, Roshan Sharma, and myself Nilanjan Das. So let us start. What is an infinite series? Let us see the definition first. If xn is a sequence in R, the set of real numbers, then the infinite series, or simply the series generated by xn, is the sequence sk defined by s1 equals to x1, s2 equals to s1 plus x2, that is x1 plus x2, and so on, sk equals to sk minus 1 plus xk, that is x1 plus x2 plus dot 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 plus xk. So it is convenient to use symbols such as summation xn to denote both the infinite series S generated by the sequence xn and also to denote the value of the limit S, that is the limit of the sequence S. If we go back to the history, then we can see that since the ancient time, infinite series have been a source of wonder and amusement because they can be manipulated to appear to contradict our understanding of numbers and nature. Mathematicians of the late 17th and 18th centuries were often puzzled by the results they would get while working with infinite series. By the 19th century, it had become apparent that divergent series were often the cause of all difficulties. Like Niels Henrik Abel in 1826 mentioned that divergent series are the invention of the devil. Also, Maurice Klein in 1972 remarked that by using divergent series, one may draw any conclusion he pleases, and that's why these series have produced so many fallacies and so many paradoxes. Also, in 1827, Peter Lejeune Dirichlet discovered a very surprising result while working on conditions that ensured the convergence of Fourier series. He was the first person to notice that it is possible to rearrange the terms of a certain series, which is now known as conditionally convergent series, such that its sum would change upon rearrangement. Now, why does this hold at all? Dirichlet was never able to give an answer to this question. However, in a paper he published in the year 1837, he proved that rearranging the terms of an absolutely convergent series does not alter its sum. In 1852, Bernhard Riemann began working on a paper extending Dirichlet's results on the convergence of Fourier series and soon found a remarkable explanation that accounted for this bizarre behavior, now known as the famous Riemann's rearrangement theorem, which he incorporated in his paper on the Fourier series. Now my teammate Roshan Sharma will take over from here.
To understand Riemann's theorem, we will use the definition of the sum of an infinite series and 7 basic theorems which are quite intuitive, and also we will distinguish between two types of convergent series. So here is the definition for sum of an infinite series. If the limit of the nth partial sum Sn of the infinite series summation an exists, so here an is the sequence we are using to construct the series summation an, and Sn is the sequence of partial sums of this series summation n. So if the limit of the nth partial sum Sn exists and equals S, then we say summation n converges and its sum is S. Okay, so this way we define the sum of a series summation n. And if the limit of the nth partial sum Sn does not exist, then we say the series summation n diverges and has no sum. Convergence tests. So why were convergence tests for series required? It was not always easy to find a simplified closed form for the nth partial sum of most of the infinite series, and in some cases it was impossible. So Augustin Louis Cauchy as well as Abel and Dirichlet realized this difficulty and were among the first to devise a number of theorems or tests to determine the convergence of a series. So here we will present 7 such theorems or tests on convergent and divergent series. So here is theorem 1. It says that the sum of two convergent series is again a convergent series. So if there is a series summation n which sums up to S, and there is another series summation bn which sums up to t, then the series each of whose term is an plus bn will sum up to S plus t. Okay. Then theorem 2 says that the sum of a convergent series and a divergent series is a divergent series. Theorem 3 states that the first finite number of terms do not determine the convergence or divergence of a series. Okay. So it's like if we have a sequence n and use it to construct a series summation n, so the whole series, like if we take the terms of n running from 1 to infinity, so this series, and suppose if we take the I minus 1th tail of n, the sequence n, okay, then this new series, which will ignore say the first I minus 1 terms, both these series will converge or both will diverge. Okay. Then theorem 4 says that if the series summation n converges, then the corresponding sequence n from which we constructed this series, so the limit of that sequence will be 0. So the terms of that sequence which we used to construct this series, they will tend to 0. Theorem 5 states that if summation mod of n, that is the series of absolute values of the sequence n, if this converges, then summation n also converges. However, we'll see later that the converse is not true. Theorem 6 is quite important. The comparison test. Suppose an and bn are two real sequences, and suppose that for some natural number k, we have for all n greater than equal to k. So it's like eventually the sequence an is less than equal to bn. All the terms of the sequence n eventually are less than or equal to the terms of the sequence bn. But both the sequences are non-negative sequences. Okay. Then if summation bn, this series converges, then summation n will also converge. Okay. So the convergence of the larger series, you can say, because each term of summation bn is eventually greater than each term of summation n. So if summation bn converges, then summation n also converges. And if summation n, if the smaller one diverges, then summation bn also diverges. Then 7th theorem, it's the Leibniz alternating series test. The alternating series summation n runs from 1 to infinity, minus 1 power n minus 1 to n. So it's like a1 minus a2 plus a3 minus a4. So where all the an are positive or all an are negative. Okay, so this is the alternating series, definition of alternating series. So this alternating series converges if the sequence of absolute values of n is monotonically decreasing and tending to 0. That is, the sequence mod of n should be monotonically decreasing and limit n equal to 0. Case study, harmonic series. So harmonic series are of quite interest in sequences and series. Theorem 4 says that it is necessary for the terms of a series to approach 0 if the series is to converge. But is this a sufficient condition for a series to converge? See, theorem 4 here, it states that if the series summation n converges, then the corresponding sequence n will tend to 0. However, is it a sufficient condition for a series to converge? The answer to this is supplied by a famous counterexample, the harmonic series summation 1 by n. We shall show that the harmonic series diverges though the terms of harmonic series tend to 0 as n tends to infinity. The terms of summation n can be grouped. Note that not rearranged. They can be grouped as in the following figure. So how are we grouping? This is the series expanded, 1 plus 1 by 2 plus 1 by 3 plus 1 by 4 plus 1 by 5 . Okay. So the first two terms we keep as it is. For the next two terms, see, I can write 1 by 3 is greater than equal to 1 by 4, and this is equal to 1 by 4. For the next four terms, I can write 1 by 5, 1 by 6, 1 by 7. Each of these is greater than equal to 1 by 8. Then for the next 8 terms, I can write each of them is greater than equal to 1 by 16. Okay. So this series is greater than, strictly greater than, in fact. Yeah. So strictly greater than 1 plus 1 by 2 plus 1, replacing 1 by 4 here, because 1 by 3 is greater than 1 by 4. Then here, for each of them, I am writing 1 by 8. So this series is greater than 1 plus 1 by 2 plus 1 by 4 plus 1 by 4 plus 4 times 1 by 8 plus 8 times 1 by 16. Okay. So, and now this series is nothing but 1 plus half plus 2 by 4 is half, 4 by 8 is again half, 8 by 16 is again half. So 1 plus half plus half plus half and till infinity. Obviously this series now diverges. It's like we are adding 1 infinitely many times. Okay. So clearly each group sectioned off in the harmonic series in the figure is greater than half. Yeah. So effectively we are summing a series in which every term is at least half. Thus the nth partial sum increases without bound, and so the harmonic series diverges. However, the alternating harmonic series summation minus 1 power n minus 1 by n, this alternating harmonic series is totally a different story. The absolute value of the terms of this series are monotonically decreasing and tend to 0. Yeah. So we had seen by theorem 7, that is the Leibniz alternating series test, we can conclude that the alternating harmonic series must converge. Okay. And in fact, we'll see that using the Taylor expansion of ln 1 plus x. So we get that this series actually converges to ln 2, natural logarithm of 2. But although the alternating harmonic series converges, the series obtained by replacing each term by its absolute value, like if we take the alternating harmonic series, then if we replace each term by its absolute value, then we'll actually get the harmonic series only. Okay, so the series obtained by replacing each term by its absolute value, which is basically the harmonic series, that will diverge. Okay, so this shows that the convergence of summation n does not imply the convergence of summation of mod of n. Okay, that is, converse of theorem 5 does not hold. Okay, so from there we are led naturally to define two types of infinite series. Okay, so first one is absolutely convergent series. A series summation n is called absolutely convergent if summation mod of n also converges. Okay, however, this is the definition of conditionally convergent series. A series summation n is called conditionally convergent if this series itself is convergent, but the series of absolute values, this diverges. Okay, so if summation n converges but summation of mod of n diverges. So from the explanation put earlier, it is evident that the alternating harmonic series is a conditionally convergent series, because this itself is convergent, we had seen from the alternating series test. However, the series of absolute values, which is nothing but the harmonic series, that diverges. So we are now ready to understand one of the most celebrated theorems for conditionally convergent series, which is Riemann's rearrangement theorem, which we will present in two parts. Riemann's rearrangement theorem, part 1. So it says that in a conditionally convergent series, the sum of the positive terms is a divergent series, and the sum of the negative terms is also a divergent series. So if we take the positive terms of the series and negative terms separately, both these series will diverge. Proof. So firstly, we claim that in any conditionally convergent series, summation an, it should have infinitely many positive as well as negative terms. So our claim is a conditionally convergent series must have infinitely many positive as well as negative terms. Proof. So firstly, a conditionally convergent series must have positive as well as negative terms, because if all its terms were positive or all were negative, it would be an absolutely convergent series. Because see, summation an is a conditionally convergent series we have. Okay, so that means summation n converges, but summation mod n diverges. Okay, but suppose if all the terms are positive, then summation n and summation mod of n both will be the same series actually. And so summation n converges, then summation mod n will also converge. It will make it absolutely convergent. And similarly, if all the terms were negative, then if summation n converges to, suppose the sum is s, then summation mod n will converge to minus s. Okay, so again that will also become an absolutely convergent series. But that is not the case. We have summation n is a conditionally convergent series. Hence, so from here we can claim that a conditionally convergent series must have positive as well as negative terms. Right? Now, if it has only finitely many negative terms, okay, so we are now going to prove that it has positive and negative, but it has infinitely many positive as well as negative terms. So suppose it has only finitely many negative terms, then there exists some natural number k such that all the terms of an are greater than 0, are positive after the kth term. Okay, then the series formed from the k tail of the sequence a n. So if the series summation a k plus n of positive terms, this must converge. Okay, this is because from theorem 3 stated earlier, the first finitely many terms do not affect the convergence or divergence of an infinite series. Okay, this again would mean that summation an is an absolutely convergent series. It's a contradiction. Also, in a similar way, we can arrive at a contradiction if we assume summation n has only finitely many positive terms. So hence, till now we proved that any infinite series will have any conditionally convergent series, sorry, it will have infinitely many positive as well as negative terms. Okay, so we take a conditionally convergent series summation n and separate it into two infinite series, one of all the positive terms and another of all the negative terms, and represent this series by summation an plus and summation n minus respectively. So how we do that? We define the terms n plus and n minus as follows. So for n plus, what we do, we take the sequence n. If a term in the sequence n is positive, then we take that one. Otherwise, if it is negative, we take 0 in place of that. Similarly for n minus, if the term n is negative, we take that, and if it is positive, we take 0. So with this definition, we can recover the original series without rearranging terms by simply writing the series summation an is equal to summation an plus summation an minus. Okay. Now for the convergence of an plus and an minus. So this is like this is the summation an is our conditionally convergent series. We are breaking into a series of all the positive terms and a series of all the negative terms. What we wanted to prove in this theorem, that both these two will diverge. Now we have 4 possibilities. Case 1, summation an plus converges and summation an minus also converges. Case 2, this converges but this diverges. Case 3, this first one diverges and this summation an minus converges. And case 4, both diverge. So we want to prove that only case 4 holds. So using the definition of absolutely and conditionally convergent series, Riemann showed that cases 1, 2 and 3 are impossible, and hence case 4 follows. So here is the proof for this claim. Okay, so this is the case 1. Suppose so both converges in case 1. So suppose the summation n plus converges to s and summation n minus converges to minus t. Okay, where s and t both are greater than 0. That's why we took a minus here. Then summation mod n minus will converge to t. Okay, because here each term is less than or equal to 0, so its absolute values will be just the negative of this. Since in this case summation mod of n equal to summation n plus, because these are all positive, and for here we take mod. Okay, this and both the series on the RHS are convergent. This converges to s, this converges to t. Therefore summation mod n must converge to s plus t by theorem 1. Okay, but this would imply that summation n is an absolutely convergent series, which is again a contradiction. Hence case 1 is not possible. Okay, then case 2 is summation n plus converges and summation n minus diverges. We can't have case 2 because here summation n equal to summation n plus summation n minus. Now this first one, summation n plus, is convergent and summation n minus is divergent. Now in theorem 2 we had seen that the sum of a convergent series and a divergent series is a divergent series. So this means that summation n is divergent, but again a contradiction, because summation n being a conditionally convergent series should converge. Summation n should converge, however summation of mod n should diverge for this to be a conditionally convergent series. Again in case 3, that is summation n plus diverges and summation n minus converges. So this is essentially similar to case 2. Again here summation n equal to summation n plus summation n minus, then the sum of a convergent series and a divergent series will diverge. So again summation n will diverge, which is a contradiction, as summation n being a conditionally convergent series should converge. Hence case 3 is also not possible. Therefore we must have case 4, that is both summation n plus and summation n minus diverges. This proves the first part of the Riemann's rearrangement theorem. This also offers an insight as to why the sum of a conditionally convergent series can be changed by rearranging terms. In fact, we'll now see that the terms can be rearranged so that the series adds up to any number we wish. So that's the beauty of this theorem. Riemann's rearrangement theorem part 2. So this states that let summation n be a conditionally convergent series and let s be any given real number. Then there exists a rearrangement of the terms of summation n that converges to s. Okay, so it's like we can rearrange the series summation n in such a way that it can converge to any real number you want. So proof: first consider the positive terms of summation n and add together in order. Okay, the order should be maintained for adding the positive terms. Just enough of the first positive terms of summation n so that their sum exceeds s. Okay, so we will take the first few positive terms till their sum exceeds s. And suppose we need first n1 positive terms for this, then call this partial sum as Sn1. So we must have Sn1 greater than s. Okay, note that this thing is possible, like choosing some n1 terms so that the sum exceeds s. It will always like be a case where the sum exceeds s, because no matter how large s is, we know that the series of positive terms diverges to infinity, as proved in the previous theorem. Okay, now to this sum Sn1 add in order just enough of the first negative terms of summation n to make the resulting sum less than s. Okay, So it's like we take first n2 negative terms, suppose, of summation n, and we add to the series summation Sn1, the series Sn1 we got, and then we must have the partial sum Sn1 plus n2 should be less than S, just less than S. Again, we can also do this because no matter how far the positive terms took us to the right of S, no matter how much greater Sn1 was from S, since the negative terms, the series of negative terms of summation n diverges to minus infinity, we can always come back so that Sn1 plus n2 is less than S. Now add just enough of the next few positive terms again, say n3 positive terms, okay, to the sum to exceed S again. We now have the partial sum Sn1 plus n2 plus n3 greater than S, and then we repeat this kind of process. Okay, so again we take some next n4 of the negative terms from summation n series, and we want that this partial sum Sn1 plus n2 plus n3 plus n4 should be less than S. So repeat this process, adding each time just enough new positive terms to make the sum exceed S, and then just enough new negative terms to make the sum less than S. Now notice that these partial sums differ from S by at most one positive or one negative term of summation n. Now since summation n converges, so its terms tend to 0, like the terms of the sequence n tend to 0 by theorem 4. So for every epsilon greater than 0, there exists some natural number k such that all the terms of this sequence an after some kth term are all within epsilon neighborhood of 0. Then as the partial sums differ from S by at most one positive or one negative term, then if we go out far enough in the series, like after the ith term, suppose we got in the series all the terms are greater than, after all the terms are greater than the kth term, then we can get the partial sums as close to S as we wish, because all the terms after that are within epsilon neighborhood of 0. So we can get the partial sums as close to S within any epsilon neighborhood of S. This proves that the series of rearranged terms converges to S. Note that rearrangements are not unique. A rearrangement need not be constructed in the manner just we described above to converge to some real number S. There can exist some other rearrangements. Well, Riemann's rearrangement theorem says even more than that we presented till now. It also says that there exists a rearrangement of the terms of any conditionally convergent series so that it will diverge. So here's an intuitive proof. So suppose one such rearrangement is to pick positive terms such that it add to a million, and then just add one negative term, and then again add positive terms, next positive terms to reach the sum to a trillion, and then again add one negative term, and then again add positive terms till we are say beyond 10 power 100 and so on, and again add a negative term. Okay, so obviously in this way we will cover up all the terms of the series, and in the end the series will obviously diverge. Okay, again the Riemann's rearrangement theorem also says that we can rearrange the terms of a conditionally convergent series to oscillate finitely or infinitely. That's the beauty of Riemann's rearrangement theorem. So it says much more. Now here we present some applications. So consider the example of alternating harmonic series. We had seen this before, okay? So we had earlier shown that this is a conditionally convergent series. In fact, it converges to ln2, natural logarithm of 2. We can show this using the Taylor's expansion, that it converges to ln2. By Riemann's rearrangement theorem, there exists rearrangements of this series which converge to any real number, or diverge, or oscillate finitely or infinitely. We shall show a rearrangement where it converges to pi. So we chose pi, and we'll show a rearrangement where the series, rearranged series, will converge to pi. So we take first few positive terms from the series so that the sum just exceeds pi. So we'll take 76 from of the first positive terms. So 1 plus 1 by 3 up to 1 by 151. It will give me just 3.1471. That is, till 1 by 149 we were less than pi, and as soon as we added 1 by 151 we just exceeded pi. Pi value we know 3.14159. Okay, so we just exceeded here. So we'll take to here. Then we'll take just enough negative terms, first few negative terms from the series. Okay, so the first negative term in the alternating harmonic series was minus half. So we take just this one, and we got lesser than pi. So we stop here. Okay. Then after that, we'll take first the next 129 positive terms. Okay. So from 150 till 1 by 151 we were done. Now from 1 by 153 up to 1 by 409 we'll again add, and this will again make our sum just greater than pi. So it's like till 1 by 407 we were less than pi, but here we exceeded pi. Pi is 3.14159, so this is greater. Again we take first few negative terms to make this sum smaller than pi. So the next negative term is 1 by 4, and just by taking 1 by 4 we are again we reached smaller than pi. So in this way we continue, and by this way the rearranged series will eventually converge to pi, as we had seen in the previous theorem and we had proved. Okay, so that's all from the presentation. I hope you enjoyed. This is a really beautiful topic, and a lot can be said more on this topic, but thank you all. So this was from Group O presentation for real analysis course.